In May 1983, after a 3-year organizing drive, a bare majority of Yale's 2,600 clerical and technical workers voted to unionize. This was the first time at a major private U.S. university that the so-called white-collar and pink-collar workers, mainly women, formed a union. The new union, Local 34, became the sister union to the long-established and militant Local 35, Hotel and Restaurant Workers Union.
After over a year of negotiating with the Yale administration, unwilling to reach a fair settlement, the clerical and technical workers struck on September 26, 1984. The strike was for a first contract, for better pay and a fair salary structure, for pensions, for security. At a deeper level, the strike was for respect.
Picket lines were set up at entrances to more than 200 Yale buildings, scattered over much of downtown New Haven.
On Trumbull Street, at 451 College Street, at Sterling Library on the Central Campus, at the nearby law school.
In front of the Hall of Graduate Studies and Art and Architecture. Across town at Epidemiology in the medical school area.
And here at the Yale Health Plan, confronting Provost Brainard and Yale President A. Bartlett Giamatti and Vice President Michael Finnerty.
From the beginning of the strike, we gained a significant amount of student support for ending the dispute with Yale.
Students readily signed petitions which expressed their concern over crossing picket lines in order to get an education. The petitions asked Yale to bargain at end to the strike.
The picketers' morale was also boosted by an outpouring of support from the people of New Haven, who were well aware of having one of the richest universities located in the nation's 7th poorest city. Passing cars honked horns on normally quiet streets, and residents brought coffee, pastries, and even warm clothing to us in the uncertain fall weather.
On the third day of the strike, we picked our last paycheck at the Payne Whitney Gymnasium, not knowing that we would not receive another one from Yale for another 11 weeks.
From the gym, we marched together, with high spirits that characterized much of the subsequent strike, chanting, "Is Yale right or wrong?
They're wrong.
Are we weak or strong?
We're strong."
The sign says, "President Giamatti works for Yale just like I do, but he has a better contract."
The march from the gym led to the cross campus to participate in a student rally. Hundreds of petitions urging the Yale administration to negotiate an end to the strike have been signed by Yale students. Over 500 classes voted to meet off campus to avoid our picket lines, and support was growing. The rally ended when petitions were delivered to the seat of Yale power, Woodbridge Hall.
We charged that Yale discriminated against women and black employees. Yale denied the charge, but before the first week of the strike had ended, Yale economics professor Raymond Fair released a study supporting our claim that women are paid less than men and blacks are paid significantly less than whites. Here, Professor Fair receives a hug from an appreciative striker.
And here, we chair on a meeting of Local 35. From the beginning of our union drive, we received substantial moral and financial support from Local 35, Yale service and maintenance workers.
When we struck Yale, virtually all the members of Local 35 refused to cross our picket lines despite threats of dismissal. Local 35 solidarity meant that all dining halls closed down and janitorial work and skilled maintenance stopped. The unity between the two unions ultimately ensured victories for both.
Other New Haven area unions lent their support. Machinist Lodge 609 at Winchester joined our picket lines, and Hospital Local 1199 was there for our rallies.
Even with the solid support of Local 35, it was not possible to shut down Yale completely. So we had to develop alternative tactics to call attention to our just demands.
On Friday, October 5th, 1,000 strikers marched from strike headquarters in the First Methodist Church to the home of President Giamatti. About 200 of us stood in the middle of Hillhouse Avenue while the rest conducted a silent vigil on the sidewalk.
We were arrested, taken to police headquarters, booked, and then released on our own recognizance. Those of us arrested included grandmothers, pregnant women, single parents, and many who only a year ago refused to join the union at all.
We called our action a witness for equality in the tradition of nonviolent civil disobedience of the civil rights movement. While the arrests were being made, our fellow strikers passed out thousands of leaflets throughout New Haven explaining our stand.
We have joined in the witness because Yale's announced intention to starve us into abandoning our 4-year-old struggle for equality leaves us no honorable alternative.
Yale has told us and the community that it will never bend or compromise, but will merely wait until we and our children starve.
This is not what has made Yale a great university. It is against this denial of Yale's own values that we witness. Yale, however, expresses many different values. Here we are demonstrating at the power plant against the few scabs who stayed on the job and received a free dinner for crossing our picket lines.
Other scabs like New York Mayor Ed Koch crossed our lines for other reasons.
In full-page newspaper ads, Yale claimed its offer would increase our wages by 24% in 2 years. Strikers responded, 24% of nothing is still nothing.
By mid-October, support had grown across New Haven, Connecticut, and the nation.
This meeting took place at Battelle Chapel before a march of Locals 34 and 35. Although Yale threatened graduate students who refused to do clerical and technical work and took Local 35 to arbitration to force members back to work, dividing Local 34 from its supporters was unsuccessful.
Nationwide support for our strike was becoming evident as National Organization for Women President Judy Goldsmith and AFL-CIO President Lane Kirkland came to New Haven and stated their support of our call for equal pay for equal work.
Scores of unions made material donations to our union. The building trades, electrical workers, machinists, service employees, and many more.
Students from the Yale Medical and Law Schools, History of Art, Yale alumni, as well as students from Harvard and elsewhere made contributions, as well as clericals from across the continent gave thousands of dollars to our strike fund, as did peace and progressive organizations.
A month after the strike began, with no movement on the part of Yale, we invited students, faculty, and community and labor supporters to join us in our second mass civil disobedience. The civil rights movement was represented by Reverend Ralph Abernathy, waving in this slide.
Marching from Battelle Chapel and strike headquarters in the First Methodist Church shortly after noon on October 26, we and our friends lined Wall Street with Yale's motto, Lux et Veritas, light and truth.
The truth was that Yale was still in the dark ages, and Local 34 was bringing light to the community.
We began our second nonviolent witness for equality while adjacent to our witness in Woodbridge Hall. The 16-member Yale Corporation was meeting.
The appropriately named Yale Corporation is the governing body and has the real power at Yale. Paul Moore, an Episcopal bishop, was a member of the Yale Corporation.
Cardboard silhouettes of corporation members were held high above demonstrators. As our brothers and sisters were being arrested, we handed out leaflets with the names of corporate and government connections of the Yale Corporation.
Student supporters were arrested with us. Others leaned out of windows in adjoining colleges with banners supporting Local 34. Sympathetic placards were carried by members of several local community organizations.
Although President Giamatti boasted that the university was working fine without 2,500 employees from Locals 34 and 35, many departments were in serious difficulty, and one group of Yale students staged a sit-in at the library because of curtailed hours, and another initiated a lawsuit against Yale for breach of contract.
Our silent witness was heard nationwide, as were our demands, our songs, and our unity, loud and clear. The network television Phil Donahue show came to New Haven. Strikers lined up to attend and brought our struggle to millions of homes. President Giamatti told the national TV audience he had hired no strikebreakers.
Yet on the next day, this picket sign was photographed with a list of strikebreakers at the Yale Health Plan.
We were willing to compromise, but Yale didn't move. We discussed intensely among ourselves a plan to shut down Yale for 3 days.
We talked with students, supervisors, and managers, with deans and chairs of departments on the line, and pizza parlors and lunch counters. We talked with faculty as they passed our picket lines. A striker is exchanging a few words with Scotty Sherman, Yale's chief counsel.
Our moratorium on business as usual at Yale began as we entered the 8th week of the strike. We marched from one end of Yale to the other.
When a political science student complained that the strike was interfering with educational process, President Giamatti retorted, "That's your problem, honey." This striker threw the comment back in his face.
Student support for our strike grew because of our just demands and the obvious callousness of the Yale administration. An alumna of Yale's business school said, "The university style reminds me of Conan the Barbarian. It's the style of fear and oppression."
Biology professor John Trunkus, seen here talking to strikers, asserted participating in this moratorium and helping to bring this debilitating strike to an end will immeasurably improve the academic atmosphere.
One of the custodians in Local 35 summed up the spirit of solidarity. Black, white, we stand on the picket line as brothers and sisters. This strike has given me the opportunity to see what the university stands for and what the workers stand for.
The real Yale University, governed by the biggest corporations in the nation, was being exposed. Our union stood for the end to low salaries for mostly women workers and an end to even greater discrimination against black women workers.
On the second day of the moratorium, strikers and students marched through the science area for a tour of Yale's wealth. We stopped at campus buildings to hear of the corporate connections and the vast funds pouring into the computer biology, nuclear structure, geology, and forestry departments.
We began to realize concretely the extent of the university's enormous financial resources. Even while Yale's wealth was being revealed, Michael Finnerty, Vice President for Administration, told our negotiating team that no matter how much money Yale has, it would not allocate more to the clerical and technical workers.
Anger at Finnerty's remarks exploded the next day. Pickets in front of Woolsey Hall shouted, horns blared, and a delegation from the picket lines marched into the vice president's office.
Later that afternoon, a rally against discrimination was held at the medical school. Glennie Birch of our union brought the crowd to its feet when she simply asked, "Is it wrong that we want our children to have good teeth? Is it wrong that we want to be able to retire above the poverty level?" Glennie reminded the rally, "We are not begging, we are asking for what we rightfully deserve."
Damn the well-paid, arrogant men at Woodbridge Hall who refused to negotiate. Support the women and men of Local 34, Yale's true humanists.
State Senator John Daniels here joined our rally. He was one of many elected officials who gave their support. Faculty members of the colleges and universities of New York City also supported Local 34.
As a result of the 3-day moratorium, many on and off campus were led to a new understanding of the justice of our cause and of the Yale administration's special interests.
As the provost tried to justify Yale's new proposal to a skeptical union member.
Concern over damage being done to the whole of New Haven by Yale's unwillingness to settle led to the formation of a community organization which sent a delegation to talk with Yale officials. Yale did not move.
In one of our most difficult decisions, after 2 weeks of vigorous debate, which took place at meetings like this on every picket line, we voted to return to work without a contract.
On December 4th, 10 weeks after walking out, we gathered outside our workplaces and all marched in together to return to work. We did this to prevent Yale from splitting our union from Local 35, whose contract would end January 18th, to allow us to organize support inside the university and to avoid picketing empty buildings during holiday vacations.
3 days after we returned, a rally was held next to Woodbridge Hall. organized by the New Haven Committee for a Just Settlement. The rally brought members of clerical and technical unions at universities throughout Northeast and representatives of transport, auto workers, machinists, teamsters, government employees, and many other unions.
We were told by many speakers that our fight for pay equity and an end to economic discrimination was the vanguard of the union movement of the 1980s and 90s. Unionists were joined by state and local elected officials who spoke in support of Local 34. One alderman elicited loud applause by calling for a general strike if nothing else moved Yale to negotiate. By returning to work and taking the strike inside, we gave the Yale administration breathing space to assess the damage done during the fall semester to its educational and research establishment, and to decide to bargain for a reasonable settlement rather than face a resumption of the strike in January. An arbitrator's ruling that Local 35 members had the right to honor our picket line showed the administration that it would not be able to break our solidarity.
We won a good contract because we struggled for economic equity, because of our creative use of songs, rallies, marches, civil disobedience, because of the support of much of the Yale and New Haven communities and workers everywhere, but especially because of our unity within Local 34 and with Local 35. The sign reads, "Union solidarity is not just academic."
For 10 weeks in the fall, the clerical and technical workers of Yale outshone its students, the faculty, and beautiful buildings. Thousands of Yale workers gained confidence in their strength and in their co-workers, and came for the first time to identify as workers, as union members, as sisters and brothers.
We captured the imagination of women workers everywhere. We won respect and an important victory.